Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're not just going to talk about success. We're going to build the one internal engine that truly powers all meaningful achievement. We're building your grit generator.
But first, we have to dismantle a really dangerous myth, the idea of overnight success. We see the summit, right? We see the trophy, but we are never ever shown the brutal, grueling climb. And this distorted reality, it makes achievement look easy.
And that distortion leads us to the most important question of all. Why do we quit when things get hard? Well, the simple answer is we've been tricked into thinking it wasn't supposed to be this difficult in the first place.
So this first section is all about understanding that very problem. Why our current approach to goals, which is based on this myth, is just fundamentally broken. The solution then is to install a whole new operating system. It's about building an internal engine, the grit generator, that completely redefines what failure even means. With this engine running, failure is no longer an outcome. It's simply the choice to stop trying. Setbacks, they become data. Rejection, that's just redirection. So what is this engine actually made of? How does it work? Let's pop the hood and look at the two core components that, when you put them together, fuel all long-term achievement.
You know, this whole concept was defined by a psychologist named Angela Duckworth. She studied everyone from West Point cadets to National Spelling Bee contestants, and what she found was mind-blowing. It wasn't talent, it wasn't IQ. The single greatest predictor of success was grit, this powerful combination of passion and perseverance.
Now, what's really cool is how these two forces work together. Grit is really a marriage of your compass and your engine. Passion is your why, it's your compass, it gives you a direction, a deep purpose. But perseverance, that's your engine. It's the how. It's the daily effort that actually moves you forward. And this slide just brilliantly illustrates why you need both. One without the other just completely falls apart. Passion alone is just a daydream, right? It's a vision with no action. And perseverance without that deep sense of purpose, that's just joyless grinding, which leads you straight to burnout. You have to have both engines running in harmony.
All right, let's get practical. Let's get our hands dirty. Here is the blueprint for building your own grit generator, piece by piece.
Your grit generator has 5 interconnected systems. Your purpose is the fuel, and your goals are the navigation. But today, we're going to focus on installing the 3 core mechanical parts, the mindset, the habits, and the rest that keeps the whole thing running smoothly.
We'll start with the combustion chamber, your mindset. You know, our culture is just obsessed with this idea of innate talent. But this quote, this just captures the truth. The person who's had to struggle and strive has built the muscles of perseverance. Grit is the great equalizer. The key here is adopting what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. Think of it as the ignition switch for grit. Instead of believing your abilities are fixed, you believe they can be developed. Challenges become opportunities, and failure, well, failure isn't some final verdict on your worth. It's just useful data for the next try.
Next up is the flywheel, your daily habits. This is such a fantastic analogy. A real flywheel takes a huge amount of effort to get moving. But once it's spinning, it creates its own unstoppable momentum. And your small daily actions work exactly the same way.
So, here's the crucial point. Grit isn't about some heroic one-time effort. It's about building this momentum. You start with a habit so small you'd feel silly saying no, like doing 2 push-ups instead of 50. Attach it to something you already do, and most importantly, focus on consistency, not perfection. Of course, no engine can run at full throttle forever. That's why a cooling system is so critical. Strategic rest isn't a distraction or a sign of weakness. It is essential maintenance for the machine. Schedule your recovery, and please remember, your value as a person is not tied to your productivity. Okay, so we have the blueprint, we understand the components, but how in the world do we overcome that initial inertia and get this powerful machine running, especially when it feels totally overwhelming?
The key is this simple but incredibly powerful number. The 1% rule is designed to eliminate the paralysis that comes from staring at a massive goal. So instead of trying to write the whole book, just write one good paragraph. Instead of cleaning the entire house, just clean one countertop. This makes starting feel achievable, and starting is what builds momentum.
Anyone can improve by just 1%. And what about procrastination? The trick is to realize it's an emotion management problem, not a time management one. We procrastinate to avoid negative feelings. So first, just name that feeling. Then use the 5-minute rule. Commit to working on that thing you're dreading for just 5 minutes. So often, that's all it takes to break the spell. So what happens when the engine runs consistently? Well, a fundamental shift occurs. Building grit stops being something you do, and it becomes part of who you are. Operating your grit generator long enough triggers a profound internal shift in how you see yourself, your challenges, and your place in the world. It's a complete identity upgrade. You move from an identity of fear to an identity of resilience. You stop being someone who is trying not to fail, and you become someone who perseveres, period. Challenges are no longer threats. They're just interesting puzzles to solve. And failure isn't the end. It's just a course correction. The world is filled with smart, talented people, but the world is changed by the gritty ones, the ones who simply refuse to quit. You now have the blueprint for the most important machine you will ever build. So the only question left is, what legacy will you build?